things and working with high-end clients is always an intriguing one, but also a hurdle, right? For a lot of people. A lot of people, myself included, didn't necessarily grow up with an affluent circle around me. In fact, I really didn't know anybody who was, ultra wealthy, or I guess you could even say wealthy by definition, until I got into the real estate business, which forced me to be creative in finding a way to break into these markets. And for a couple of years, that was my main goal, was to sell luxury real estate. At the time, luxury real estate was booming in New Jersey, and then it went into a lull, which I pulled back from significantly. And with COVID in the last couple of years, we've really seen it bounce back. Although I would begin by saying I would be very cautious for anybody on this call or in our brokerage to make this the main focus of their business in New Jersey. The real estate market in the high end is hyper volatile. When it comes to luxury real estate, the taxation that takes place in our state in comparison to others, the SALT tax limiting write-offs at $10,000 per individual, all of these compound to where outside of a pandemic, where you have an abundance of higher end folks making their way out of the city, you don't really have a super deep buyer pool in the higher end. So with that established, I also feel that it should be a piece of the pie for everyone's business, right? If you can close 5-10 transactions that are $1 million plus a year as a complementary part of your business, that fuel becomes incredibly advantageous in growing the rest of your business, right? I think I just caught the end of what Eric said before, in that in working with the high-end clients, they're not really different, right? And sometimes the process is actually easier because you're dealing with somebody in some cases, in a higher percentage of cases, who already understands business, they understand finance. So the decisions less emotional, which can make it, a great use of your time if you're looking at $1 per hour activity. So if you're going to sell a house for $350,000 or a house for $1,350,000, then I think that your return will be far greater in those higher price ranges. So I'm going to start today by just asking a few questions. I'd like to ask Eric a question here, and how we start to work with higher end clients, because everybody's kind of got a story there, and then I'll tell my story, and then we're going to jump into real tactics in this. So Eric, from your perspective, and I'm gonna jump on mute here for a second. Can you just maybe tell us a little bit about your initial experience getting into the higher end? Your first deal or two, and were you purposeful about it? Did it happen by accident? And was there anything different?
Yeah. So as I was saying, when Bill was jumping on, I had this drunk monkey in my head, that told me that I wasn't good enough to deal with anything over like 850, quite frankly. So I would prospect a lot, prospect expired listings, and anytime an $850,000, $900,000 listing came up, I would just hit on my dialer, hang up, and I was literally hanging up on when it was ringing. And then one day, the OP for Livingston, I used to work, I started in the Livingston office, came in, and because everyone knew I had this thing in my head, and he said, you want to call this listing? It was a $17 million expired listing. And I looked at the address. I said, oh, I know those people. In a previous life, I had actually sold them their electric gates that open the door, the phone system that when you're at the gate. So I did reach out to her. I sent her a handwritten card because she wasn't in Jersey. She was in Florida, Naples. And she responded because she knew me. And I told her I'd been in real estate for a few years now, and I wanted to interview for the job. So quite frankly, the connection to that seller made it palatable for me to actually communicate with her. And I also didn't need it after looking back. I also brought another agent who had done, I don't think he really did $1 million listings yet, but he just made me feel comfortable. I brought a safety, my security blanket with me, and split the deal with him. And we ended up listing the house for 7.9 million and selling it for 7.2 and selling it for 5.9 million. And so what really came of that process was a couple of things. A, I realized they are really, I mean, not in all cases, obviously, but in many cases, they're not much different than us. You know, when I say us, I mean the little people in the world, me. Number two, I didn't need a second hand in it. And look, Bill will tell you once in a while, I'll call Bill and say, Bill, do you want to jump in on this? Because there's some listings that come up and opportunities. And I say, well, I want someone who's experienced. I'd rather lock it down and split it with Bill than not get it at all, you know? And I feel sometimes it might be better to have that ammunition, and Bill's got a lot more experience. I think he's got a lot more experience than me. And then, you know, so from after that experience of doing a $5.9 million sale, it literally just opened the floodgates to having no problem talking to the 2s and the 3s. And I did. I soon after took a 3.2 and a couple 1.6s, 1.5s, 2 millions, 2.5. You know, I've been in that space a handful of times. I think I've sold about 7 or 8 in total in like a 6 or 7 year span since I've been with KW.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. And it's funny. It's just like what we see a lot with new agents coming in, right? It's like they're hesitant to engage because they haven't sold a house yet. And then they sell a house, and now all of a sudden those floodgates open. So I have Matt Weiss on here too. So Matt, if you wouldn't mind just taking a minute and maybe, you know, telling us a little bit about your experience. You know, you certainly do a fair share of real estate over $1 million. Do you, and have you always, you know, had a circle of millionaire clients and friends? And, you know, how did that break-in happen for you?
Not at all. It kind of happened a little more naturally for me, right? So I just, in conducting business in that under million or more of our bread and butter market over the years, I've kind of had, you know, people that I sold homes to come back to me and step it up to the next level, right? So if you sell a $600,000 house, that's a future listing for you, as long as you keep them in your database and stay in touch with them. And that $600,000 buyer at that point in time, you know, 5 to 7 years down the line becomes $1 million buyer, right? And then so once I sold a couple of million plus homes, I would just use that and mail it out and market it. And that's how you attract some more listings in that price range, because people that have $1 million homes or greater usually want to see a proven track record that you've conducted business in that range, right? So if I would represent a buyer on $1 million purchase, I would market that to the areas that I wanted to focus on in Kinnelon, and, you know, eventually get my foot in the door on some listing appointments. And I always find the key in that price range to really be in those houses and know the inventory like the back of your hand. So you could really talk when you're in there on a listing appointment. You could talk about, you know, what I was in there, what this house has compared to what your house has. This is why I think we should be priced right here. So just kind of really knowing the inventory, you know, along with conducting some business in that range. That's kind of how it happened for me.
Awesome. So would it then make sense, Matt, to say that one of your recommendations for somebody looking to break into the luxury market would be to go around on tour and get to know these houses?
Yes. Yeah, that's very important. Knowing, you know, being in the homes and knowing the inventory is definitely a key thing that I've found for myself. It really helps with pricing and understanding that market. Because one of the things I was always nervous about before, doing higher end listings is, how am I going to hit this price right? You know what I mean? And just getting in the houses. But it's like that in the non-luxury market as well. I mean, you have to really know your inventory. That's just part of our business,
Yep. I would play a game. So guys, if you ask, you can ask Ron this, there was a long period of time where I was so hungry to sell luxury real estate. That's all I wanted to do. Right. And no matter what happened, I was going to figure out a way to do that. That was my mindset. And that set up the necessity for me to create, a process. And hold on one second. I'm going to switch over to the computer here.
All right. New Bill here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Can you guys see me now?
Gotcha.
All right, awesome. So that forced me to set up or create a process in which I had to break into a market, right? In a new market. So when I first started, my office originally was in Bloomingdale, which I love Bloomingdale, born and raised. Well, not born, just raised. And they don't have much luxury real estate there. Maybe 5 houses on the lake in Bloomingdale that would qualify for it. I then really started to break into luxury in Kinnelon, and that wasn't enough for me, right? I wanted Bergen County. So then I moved my office to Franklin Lakes. I didn't know one human being that lived in Franklin Lakes. And within 12-month period, I had some nice market share there, right? 1, 2, we had a couple $3 million pops there. We were running a $15 million listing there once. It was a fun run. But in those times, I would drive through Alpine and know the inventory there. I would drive through Saddle River. I would really focus on these high-end towns so that I had a feeling and understanding of what it was, so that first and foremost, I could talk the talk, right? Because if you can't talk the talk, if these are people that are used to certain experiences, they could be around you for 10 minutes and know that you're not used to those experiences or used to the terminology or the homes that they're leaning towards. They're going to be a bit skeptical. So first and foremost, my suggestion to you guys in putting this plan together is to create a brand that would be separate from your regular real estate brand. If you walked into Louis Vuitton tomorrow and that person approached you just like someone would approach somebody in Target, you would scratch your head and say, something's not right here, right? We have to remember when we're dealing with an affluent buyer or seller, right? Your quickest way into this game is to work with sellers. But if you're dealing with somebody in an affluent price range, number one, it's really important to force yourself to be happy for them, right? A lot of us can have some internal dialogue where they're, not super happy for somebody that maybe has all this money, or they think it's too much money, right? Not an abundance mindset. And that can really prevent you from connecting with these folks. Because the truth is, anybody on this call can be super affluent. And that doesn't mean that you're blowing money on all kinds of crazy stuff, right? People with a lot of money also have the ability to do a lot of good on this planet. So forcing yourself to get there, to be in a mindset where you can connect with somebody who's wealthy is important. Maybe you go to Garden State and go to the high-end wing and just look through some of these stores and experience how the salespeople there connect with you, right? You wanna try a bag on or just feel it in some of these stores. Guess what comes out? The white gloves, right? Their hands aren't dirty. They're not going to get the bag dirty, but this is an experience that these wealthy folks are used to. And it doesn't make them rude or bougie, right? Or anything like that. It's just what they come to expect. Go to a high-end restaurant, go to Capitol Grill, right? Go plug into Del Fresco's in the city or Masa or some of these high-end restaurants and experience how even the waiter or waitress, the hostess, interact with the consumer. It's a different experience, and we need to make sure that we are prepared to deliver a different experience. And this is where I say I want to make sure I can talk the talk. So the great part is you can go to all these stores and you don't actually have to buy anything. So you could have the easiest and quickest learning experience just by taking a trip to Riverside Mall in Hackensack, right? With all those high-end stores, and just going through and asking questions. And you may have done this before, but maybe you didn't do it taking note of how that service was provided, right? And that's where we want to meet that affluent client, where that service is. Because if you show up and you're providing that level of service, they're not asking questions if you've done this before. They're not asking questions how many clients you've worked with, because they're just going to automatically assume that you have, right? Go test drive a Bentley and watch that experience and tell me it's not different than Volkswagen. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's going to be a different experience. So we have to be prepared to deliver that, both through language and through action. This goes the same for a listing appointment. So on my high-end listing appointments, there's a whole bunch of extra pieces, right? We measure every room on our higher end listing appointments, right? We go through, we do a quick walkthrough with the owners. We ask them to sit down while we take the time to really get to know their home. We focus on materials. We measure out every single room. Ron and I used to do this all the time. Sometimes that listing appointment would take 3 or 4 hours in a $3-4 million place. But I'm telling you, I'm standing out from the other brokers. I'm not taking anything for granted, and I'm really getting to know this house. And based on time in, time out, if this is a $3 million house, that might be 10 times some of your normal sales prices or average sale price. Spending 3 times the amount of time in preparation for the listing appointment probably isn't that, different, right? So Eric, Matt, would you guys say that you might show up a little different, spend a little extra time on the listing appointment in your higher end stuff here?
That makes a lot of sense. As you're saying that, it makes a lot of sense to do that. I've never thought to do that. And so, I mean, that was worth the price of admission for me right there. In that, yes, investing more time, and it just makes sense because, I go the extra mile in other areas with my listings, my presentation, my book ahead of time. Most people say, wow, this book is a lot nicer than all the other packets people put together. So you're saying share that time, and in that time you're bringing value. They're saying to themselves, wow, no one else did this, so that's huge.
And put on a show.
Question. So Bill, you measured those rooms on your first visit?
Yeah. So on the first appointment, and again, look, if it's $1.1 million now, that it depends on where it is. $1.1 million in Franklin Lakes is like a regular house sometimes, right? So I'm not going to do that there. But I'm saying when I'm getting into a listing that I know is going to be special, if I know I'm competing against the top luxury brokers in an area, there's a part of this that becomes a show, right? And I want to make sure I'm not acting, but I want to make sure that I'm doing what they're used to and going into the store to look at a purse, and they're putting the white gloves on and they're laying out the black felt, right? And they're putting these pieces down, and that my materials for them, I would have a luxury listing presentation and I would have a residential listing presentation. And if somebody fits into my luxury division, I make that very clear to them. Because if they Google anyone on here, including me, and see that you sell $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 homes, they might scratch their head and say, is this the broker for me? If we make it very clear that we have separated our business and we have a residential division, which is great, because like Matt said, that gives us a steady stream of new buyers and sellers that are constantly moving up, gives us a nice fingers in a buyer pool that a lot of luxury brokers, pure luxury, just don't have. But it also tells them that we have something special for them. And that's my luxury division. And our luxury division comes with a completely different marketing plan, marketing package. It's a custom marketing plan for you and your property, which I could never explain to you until I meet your property. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, any broker who would walk in a house like yours and give you a marketing plan day one, to me is someone who hasn't really taken the time to get to know your property and who we're going to connect it with. So on our first appointment, we're going to take a few hours. I'm going to get to know your house on a really intimate level, which is important. I'm going to get to know you, but just as important, I'm going to get to know how a buyer would get to know your home. So I can put together a custom marketing plan for you to make sure and ensure that we are in front of the people we need to be in front of, because your house is not a generic house, right? This is a unique property, and I want to make sure I give it my time and attention. How does that sound? Sounds great. Now I've taken all the pressure off of my first meeting. I know I'm going to have a second meeting with them. It becomes an instant two-step. And my first step is to put on a show, get to know these people, and let them understand that I am here to make sure that I treat their home as something really special. And that alone, in many cases, sets me apart, especially from the brokers that begin in the high end to take it for granted that they do a lot in the high end. So separating our divisions, hyper important. Having a different story, right? If you notice, go on my Instagram. To this day, if you see a high-end property, it says courtesy of the Boswell Iosa Group Luxury Division. I want to make sure that I'm keeping that line there. And this is a two-way street, guys. If you start putting too much stuff out there about luxury, your regular clients will think twice before they call you. And I experienced that, right? People are like, oh, I know, well, you do the high end. We just had or have a little house. Are you sure you have the time for me? That's not what I want the experience to be like. So I want to make sure that I'm pumping optically two entirely different divisions, that I have a separation there, right? That's number one. Number two, to me, and this was really important when I shifted my business to Bergen County and didn't really know anybody there, was I had to create a niche. I had to create a group of people or a sphere that were going to start where I was going to connect with. Now, you can do this two ways that I'm, comfortable with. And I actually did them both at the same time. One was geographically. So you pick a neighborhood or two that's going to be your target to now win mind share when it comes to luxury, right? That's my focus. Number two is to pick a group of people that I am now going to connect with so that I become part of their fabric. So this naturally ends up happening. So for years, I did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And when I switched my office to Franklin Lakes, I would sit in the Starbucks there and work a couple hours a day. And I knew I was starting to make it when probably after 6 months, people would come in and they'd be like, oh, you're the real estate guy, right? And they would ask me questions. Right in the middle of urban farms on Franklin Lake Road, smack, in the middle of all the action. So I knew I had to be in it in order to start to create these relationships. I also joined the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school that was in Franklin Lakes. I became really close with a lot of people from Franklin Lakes. I made these connections and then they start referring me to people there. You develop a common name. So by doing that, and at the same time also having a target geographical area, we're fighting the battle, and it's a good one, on two fronts to start to win market share or mind share, right? And this is what I heard from Matt, and this is what I heard from Eric. They said it in different words, but they said they got their first sale under their belt. And then they made sure that they kept people in their circle, affluent people, knowing about it. That gave Eric the fuel to pick up the phone and call somebody else with a $5 million, $3 million listing. That gave Matt the ability to send out those postcards to the high-end people in his database, right? Database is key in splitting these. All the people in my database are split into 6 categories. The first 2 categories are residential, and luxury, LUX. I need to make sure that I consistently brand to luxury, so that they're seeing one game and that my residential people are seeing another game, and that some people are actually seeing both. If I have a client who works at Porsche, which I did, he's going to get both of them because I know he's going to connect with the residential people and he's also going to connect with a lot of luxury people as well. And we start to create this environment, this cycle that starts to feed us business, just like we did in the lower price range, but now it's a little niche, right? And if it's not our whole focus, the first year or two, maybe we just sell 3 or 4 in that $1 million+ price range and start to build our portfolio. And that portfolio gives us the ability to compound and add to that. And as long as we have this division separate, it puts us in a position to really cater to that specific individual. Eric, Matt, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that particular piece of the puzzle? You guys are on mute here.
Not necessarily, Bill. I think you covered it, but you know, just getting a sale or two under your belt and being able to go on the next listing appointment, showing that you have conducted business in that price range and in that, you know, luxury market of similar homes, to me is the most important thing. You know, show your reviews. You know, never not ask a seller, any seller, you know, but luxury most importantly, for a review on their experience, and ask them if they know anybody else that's considering selling. You know, I recently sold a house here in Kittleton on Powderhorn, and then the neighbor 2 doors down contacted me, and I got that listing. And then the neighbor 2 doors down from them contacted me, all with the same plan, right? They all kind of were selling their house and downsizing because their kids graduated and, you know, are off to college and no longer in the house, and they're downsizing and moving out of state, you know? So just feed off of it once you get it going. You know, getting it going is the challenge, but once you're there, you can definitely feed off of it.
Yeah. For just, you know, just comments for me getting started, anyone want to get started, I can only go back to my experience. And while in hindsight, I may not have absolutely needed it, I don't think I do it any different. So if I was looking to break in right now and I had a lead, as I've done in the last 3 years, I've called Bill a few times, you know, I absolutely would go, I'd rather, you know, team up, partner up, get that experience. You know, I just was watching something, it's a motivational video, and they said, you know, kids out of college got it all wrong. They come out and they want to negotiate for the highest pay, when a you know, a true business-minded entrepreneur will go to like someone who they see that has something they want, like the success, and say, listen, I'll work for you for 90 days for free. At the end of those 90 days, you know, if I deliver and you offer me a job, and then I have a job. If not, then we can part ways. You know, it's a kind of mindset. It's like, I'd rather, you know, if I didn't have any $1 million business or luxury business and I wanted to break into it, I probably would look to shadow Bill. I said, Bill, could you take me out? Or Matt, can I come with you on your next walkthrough? You know, that's really what I would want to, I'd really want to learn from the experts.
Awesome. Yeah. I'll put a plug in too. So I'm actually going to be running a luxury class, be doing a little region mega camp for the New York, New Jersey tri-state region on October 14th. The region's tapped me to run a panel on luxury. So that's going to be a little bit more systematized than what I'm going over with you guys here today, which is much more conversational. But that'll give me about a 20-minute talk on building a luxury business, followed by a panel where I have one of the top agents in Manhattan, Short Hills, New Jersey, and Miami South Beach, right? So we're going to be running with those three and talking to them about how they built their high-end business. So anything like that out there, if this is something that you are interested in, plug into. Again, it'll at the very least, give you the ability to talk the talk. Go preview these homes. Go on Franklin Lakes, Upper Saddle, Saddle River. If a house has a tour and it's $4 million, go look at it. If you see a material that you don't know what it is, ask what it is, right? You better know the difference between silestone, soapstone, right? All that, because people might expect you to say that. It also becomes immediate acceptance from a seller when you can walk through and say, wow, you know, what is that, onyx? I've never seen the light behind onyx like that before. This is something that begins to take away from their minds. Hey, maybe this person doesn't know what they're doing. And I will also say, and everybody talking about getting started, there is so much, and this is how I started too, in the word we. When I went to the Franklin Lakes office, I studied, and I am the worst with addresses, the worst on the planet, right? I'll probably forget my own address one day, mark my words. But I learned every high-end property that my office had sold in the last, I don't remember what it was, but maybe it was 6 months, maybe it was a year. I had a map of Franklin Lakes on my wall, and a pin, I wish I had a picture of it, on every sale that took place in the last year with the sale price, the square footage, the broker, so that I knew this area like the back of my hand. And what ended up happening is I knew which one, all the ones in my office were a different color. So if I would go on a listing appointment in Urban Farms, that conversation was like, oh yeah, a couple months ago, we sold the one right around the corner on, Navajo Trail for 3.2 million. It was only on for a little while. Oh, and I always had the seller's name on there, which I'm terrible with names too, by the way, but that's why I had it on the pin. That was the Jeremy residence, right? So you are bringing immediate expertise when you can have that kind of conversation with somebody. Then if you can just nail that part, talking the talk, they might not even ask you how many houses you've sold in this high price range, right? Especially if you can bring with it a concept. And by the way, in the high end, I use the exact same 3-step listing presentation that I teach the market center for our residential division. The only difference is at the end, on the high end, I add a custom marketing plan. So it's the same concept. Get you in front of as many people as possible. I might talk about some of our, partner brokerages in Manhattan and Florida and things like that. But outside of that, I'm talking to them with the exact same presentation so that I don't have to learn something new, something different, but I'm just adding some of these experience pieces and custom pieces to them. So it feels like it's much more catered to, to just them specifically. So let's start to beat this up and put a plan together, right? So Matt, are you on here with me?
Yes, me, Matt, or the other Matt?
You, Matt. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
So I know we run these, for 45 minutes, which gives us about 9 minutes left, and I want to leave it open for a couple of questions. And these Monday masterminds are meant to really be high level, but I want us all to leave with at least a little plan, right? Like some bullet points. What can we identify? I want to jump into the real estate game. Like what are some things that I should do? So you're the master of planning, right? Laying that yellow brick road. In hearing what we said today, right? What pieces would you say for the agents that are on here should they be focusing on?
So, I mean, based on the things that you mentioned, I think number one, and I think one of the things that is very important is creating a brand separate from your current business. So specific luxury, maybe that's, Bill, I don't know how you did it. Maybe you can talk a little about that. Maybe it's creating a social media specific to your luxury brand. Maybe it's a website or getting a URL that's specific to your luxury brand. You could maybe talk a little bit about what you did, but that's one of the things that I think that you mentioned that's very important. And then learning how to create and deliver that luxury experience, I think was number two. When we're creating that plan, like you said, whether it's going shopping, going to the mall, going to different areas where they give that white glove service, and really understanding what does that mean? What will the client expect when I go into their home? So I think that's number two that you mentioned. I think what everyone on this call should do. I also really like what you said about creating a niche, which is ultimately looking at a geographic neighborhood. So I think everyone on this call should think about where they want to target or what area they want to target. And then I think what you did, which is great, you did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you ultimately developed, a group of people that you started to connect with and ultimately develop some consistency in that area. Because at the end of the day, I think, like you mentioned, you had to learn how to talk the talk. But a part of that is also just building relationships with people in the area that you want to work in or want to dive into. So it is the same as almost building your residential business. It's all about building relationships, but it's about getting into whatever it is, doing something that's specific to that area, like you did with jiu-jitsu. So I mean, I think becoming part of the community is another thing that for those of you who want to start expanding into that luxury area to start, and you said it took almost 6 months. So realizing, just like anything else, you're not going to just dive in and within 30 days, you're going to be an expert and you're going to be having all these luxury listings. It's taking it step by step. So I think, again, it's creating the brand, learning how to speak, and creating and delivering the luxury experience, and then ultimately starting to get into the neighborhoods or getting into your geographic area that you want to target and build those relationships and start to hone in on what that is.
Awesome. I love that. So it's really, all it is 3 or 4 steps. 2 of these guys you could do at the same time. Thank you for that, Matt. So you're creating that. Matt, can you give me the ability to share my screen, please? You're creating this difference of brand, whether you're day 1 in the business or day 7,001 in this business. What does that look like? This takes a little planning. Put a time frame together. Okay, I'm going to take the month of October. My goal is to really hit the luxury stuff by next spring, right? I'm going to take the next month, 2 months, and I'm going to put together what my brand is going to look like. Am I going to have a slogan on that? And I'm going to make sure, I'm going to say, where is my clients interacting with my brand to where they can see both of those, right? So I'm just going to share my screen. I'm going to show you guys something super, super simple here. Can everybody see my screen here? It says Google. Yeah?
Yes.
Take your word for it. All right. So my website, our team is BA.BoswellAyosa&Co.com. If I go there, look what they're met with. This is their decision. So do I want to go to the residential division or do I want to go to the luxury division? And if I click the luxury division, then the experience that I'm going to be met with is a much different experience than if I click the other one, right? I have highlights of each of these high-end cities. These are some past stuff, the sales that we've done in Weehawken, Wyckoff, right? They can go to listings and look at some of our luxury listings and what they have right now. Here's sold. All they got to do is scroll down a little bit. They see all these sold properties that we've done all over northern New Jersey that are high-end, right? And it gives me immediate credibility in that category. So for me, having the ability to split those two are really, really important. Hang on one sec. Let me see if I'm back on here. Am I back on the main screen?
Yes.
Okay.
I think you stopped sharing your screen.
Okay, perfect. So if we create the separation, create a separate brand, then that, guys, when you're just getting started, might be as simple as just coming up with a name and a logo for your luxury, right? At the same time, who are our targets? Maybe we don't have the money to pick a geographic area. So you have to connect with people in the area you want to get into. Well, let's keep with Franklin Lakes. I did the jiu-jitsu thing. Maybe you want to join a church or some sort of religious organization there. Maybe you want to join the Chamber of Commerce there so that you can connect with people, whatever group you're affiliated with. Maybe you want to do some research and find out, wow, one of the golf courses closed down in Franklin Lakes, and most of those people now go to North Jersey Country Club in Wayne. I'll tell you right now, you want to meet people with a lot of money, you do something like that, join a country club. It might seem like a waste of $3-4 grand a year, but where else are you going to show up and people have to have your ear, right, for the next 3 or 4 hours? You're in a circle automatically where you're connecting with these people that are going to allow you to start to bridge that brand. So first we create the brand, and at the same time we identify the niche that we're going after, either people niche or a geographic niche or both. And then step 3 is real simple. Do everything in your power to make that niche aware of your brand in everything that you do. And the word "we," again, is so powerful, especially in a brokerage of our size. Keep an eye out on the daily updates to high-end stuff that closes in our office. If I close something for 1.7 million in Wyckoff, we just did it last week, and you pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, you know, do I have your permission to share this, you know, here? Always make sure that you give the listing agent, right, the option to accept. And I give you the green light. You can send that to those people. Post that on social media. We'll come up with verbiage so that you're being honest, but you're also sharing it in a way that the people in your circle might say, wow, I can't believe, you know, they just popped a $1.7 million house. That's great. But that's going to be really targeted at your niche. So we start this back and forth. Then the only game is to grow your niche, feed people into it, meet people from there, meet people from other places, and then continue to allow them to understand your brand. And then the system works naturally and it becomes this vortex. But you have to understand how to walk the walk. But you can't do that, unfortunately, in luxury real estate until you understand how to talk the talk. So that would be your other middle part, is say for every Tuesday and Thursday until next spring, I'm going to tour these neighborhoods and I'm going to walk through different high-end stores. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to watch how they communicate. I'm going to watch how this lady who just bought $25,000 worth of bags communicates back with them. And I'm going to learn by being in that seat how to best communicate here. And all of that's going to prepare me to begin selling luxury real estate next spring. Once I have everything identified, I've begun to create a sphere in the high end or have a target. And then I also have on the back end, my brand built out and know what I'm going to be targeting and know what my message is to them. So
I have one last question for you, Bill. So,
Yeah.
you know, in dovetailing on what you just said, which is, you know, go into the shops, and when you either tour homes, go into the shops where the higher end people might be shopping, or do a walkthrough on a two-step process, do you dress any different than what you're dressed right now?
Yeah. So look, truth be told, I'm in the field a lot less than I am. There were a couple of years where you didn't catch me without $1,000 suit on at some point in that day, right? That's just how it rolled, right? And I had to play that part. Our business has gotten away from that a little bit now. And I was also at the time one of the only young people in the business. Now it's cool to be young in this business. It wasn't 7-10 years ago. So for me, I had both in the car, and I would stop at gas stations, Lowe's, you name it, and I would change for my appointment. Because if I showed up with a really nice belt, you know, amazing Ferragamo shoes and a suit that looked like it was cut to every, you know, part of my body, and I showed up to show a $250,000 house with a barn in the back, those people, they don't connect with me then. And they'll make it clear to you, right? They'll be like, why are you dressing like that for me, right? So for me, it always felt important to do that. So quite often I was stopping in all kinds of different places, and I would change some days 3 or 4 times. It was my luxury division and it was my my residential division. Now I'm a little less concerned with what people think in the hour-to-hour game. So I'll look at my calendar the night before, and that'll dictate how I dress. Actually, if any of you guys noticed, in the last maybe year or so, I just wear the same thing every day. I have a whole bunch of tailored black shirts and a whole bunch of nice, decent jeans. And I don't have the time in the morning to think of what I'm going to wear. So I just wear the same thing every day, a black collared shirt and a pair of jeans, which makes my life a little easier, and it's scalable.
A la Gary Keller.
Yeah. I mean, it makes my mornings much, much simpler. So
Bill, I have a quick question for you.
Sure. How are you, Vanessa?
What would you say is the average days on market for luxury listings?
So significantly higher. In this market, we're watching that narrow a little bit, but this is an important question because they don't pop like normal ones. In a regular market in New Jersey, your average days on the market could be 6-8 months for a higher end listing. So you got to be careful. If the average home takes 8 months to sell, and you're going to be putting some money into your marketing plan. And by the way, if any of you have an opportunity, reach out to me. I'll work with you on a marketing plan. Okay. I want to make sure that you can really get this thing up and running. But you really want to secure a 12-month listing when you get into these higher price ranges. And the sellers are used to that. right? And you might give them a service guarantee, letting them know that they would have the right to terminate if you're not doing what it is that you said that you were going to do. But you got to make sure that you get yourself secured on the back end. For a while, I was playing the game of watching the expireds. I would wait till someone came on at 3 million. They would expire after a year. I would jump in, pull it. They're ready for the reduction. And then I can move it pretty quickly because they've already, worked that piece out. But your days on the market are going to vary from town to town. And you can pull those stats up pretty easily in the MLS. Even the CMAs, that's part of a CMA that I would do. I would do them completely differently for the high end. So maybe one day I'll have a class on just doing a CMA for a higher end home. We calculate average price per square foot over all of the homes to sell, in the last year, sometimes 2 years, if it's a town that doesn't have a lot of sales in those areas, because you can't get homes that really compare like this. So you're much more working off of averages and things like that. Does that answer your question, Vanessa?
It does. Thank you. Appreciate
Awesome.
that. I used to do mixed use and commercial globally when I worked at a merchant banking boutique, and those deals could take years. So I was just wondering what the luxury in northern New Jersey looked like, but thank you. That answers it.
Yeah. Now it's much shorter. It was not uncommon 4 or 5 years ago for it to take a year on average in some places to sell a higher end home. And a lot of the expectations, the higher end you get, are that you are going to be there for every sale. Every showing. So start counting your hours, guys, right? And how many hours it takes. Some of these houses take an hour to turn the lights on. So by the time you're there, every showing is 3 hours of your life. When you're done and you sell a $3 million house, you put it online and 500 people say, congrats, oh my God, that's amazing. You just lost money in some cases in comparison to if you had just focused on your $500,000 to $750,000 sales that you could put online, take a nap, and have 15 offers on them the next day, right? So make sure that you're focused, and that's why I say this should not be your entire business, especially in a down market. D. Moriello, what is the fee for service in luxury homes percentage? Flat fee, adjusted fee, do sellers pay for photos, drones, etc. up front? So there's a period of time where we used to work actually an increased fee on the higher end for our marketing plan. The higher end has become saturated with companies, especially in Bergen County, who are listing at lower prices right now, right? This is why we have a rule in our market center. If it's 70%, I believe maybe 60, I got to check what we lowered it to, of the market, the specific market is allowed to give out less, you can give out less. There are parts of Bergen County where it's really hard to find a house over 2 million giving out more than 2. And there you got to be able to be competitive. So make sure you know that before walking in. You try clubbing somebody in a $3 million house for 6%. At the very least, they're going to ask you a lot more questions than they would if you were in alignment with everybody else. And if you're not prepared to answer those questions in a way that articulates value, in the absence of value, price becomes the most important factor, and you'll be dead in the water before you even start. Matt, I stole your line, but thank you. So I would say, you know the market, they vary. So look at what's sold in the last 12 months, 6 months specifically in a market like this, see what the co-broke is, and then double that. I don't have a variable fee usually in the higher end, and I don't have a flat fee. And we don't currently have the sellers paying for anything. What we do have is the goal of having a longer listing agreement, right? If I'm spending money on drones, floor plans, videos, like we've done some pretty crazy videos on some of these properties that could cost a couple grand just for a video. If that's the case, then we need to make sure that we have a long enough listing period to give ourselves a good shot at selling it. Any other questions, guys? We're at 3:52. Before we close out, I'm actually going to pull up YouTube, and I'm going to show you guys one of our listing videos, just so that you have. And let me see here, library. just so you have an idea of what some of these can look like. Josh Altman just stole this video and did a promo on it last year. Tony Robbins, we have well over 1.5 million views on this. They dubbed one of Tony Robbins' motivational speeches over it. And I cannot find that one. Beautiful. But I do have a different one that I'll show you. So this was a house that we recently sold in Ringwood, New Jersey.
Those emotions.
For a little over $1 million, which is super high for Ringwood. That is it was $1,075,000, second highest to ever sell in Ringwood historically, the highest in the last 10 years, which beat out the last one we sold for $1 million there. So just bear with me. I'm going to show you a little example of one of these videos. It's a lifestyle video that we will do for somebody in the higher end. You guys able to see this screen here?
Yes.
Yes.
You see all my summer mix music here. That's my music in the office. So
Owned by time, by careers.
skip the ad. So guys, I just put that out there, for a close, just to again give everybody just a little insight on it. It's got to be different, right? We got to have something a little different. So now, if I get called tomorrow and somebody's in the 1.5 range, I might show them this video as an example of something that we can do. If somebody's in the 10 million, 15 million range, I'll pull out the other video that I was going to show you guys that we did. I mean, we've thrown back when we were really in this, and this is the last piece I'll leave you on. Don't forget to make contacts and connections. So we had a really nice listing in Franklin Lakes. I was able to get Lamborghini to sponsor the event, right? We sent private invites to all private jet owners. We have access to some of these lists, which you can all purchase. And we had Turnberry Ocean Club in Miami sponsor the event. So they flew up their sales team from Miami, set up a whole display on Turnberry Ocean Club and Sunny Isles down there. All the Lamborghinis were there, McLarens were there out front, right? And we had just the most incredible event, people pulling up, valet parking, Bentleys, you name it. And all it was us coordinating just like we would a regular open house, but just different people. So I got a $15 million house. You walk in, I walked into the Lamborghini dealership on Route 17, said, hey guys, I got a great opportunity for you guys if you want to show up with a couple of cars. Oh yeah. And by the way, they paid us $2,500 to bring their cars to our event, right? So now I can use that to create marketing on the other end. So you have access to people you might not before. You can ask them to send the invitation then out to their people. Join us with our new cars, right? So they can send it to all of the Lamborghini owners in Bergen County, right? Bergen County, that's one of the only Lamborghini places in northern New Jersey. So I just tell you to be creative, have fun with it, make it a little niche of what you do, but literally design it and watch yourself build it out and create these connections and bring people in. It can be a ton of fun, and it's fun for everyone else to watch you do too. So I'm going to sign off here in 1 second after I answer Amanda Smith. Do you keep your luxury brand completely separate as far as social media and YouTube? I used to, I no longer do. Everything is blended together now. I just make sure that I write on anything luxury. It's our luxury division. I think you can have that crossover as long as you're very clear in keeping them separate from a branding perspective. Guys, thank you so much for everybody's time. Make sure you hop on our regional event that I'll be hosting on the same topic. We'll get a little bit deeper and have some other experts share their insight. Thank you to Matt and to Eric for sharing their experiences today and jumping into the luxury market. And I look forward to watching all you guys grow your high-end business too. I'm always here as a resource. Have a great one.